Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree DLC review, my fair review. After 27 months, the DLC for the Elden Ring is finally out. One of the best received titles in the last 5 years got one huge add-on. Media rated it as the best DLC ever, while players are mostly upset and disappointed by this DLC. Who is right this time? No one. Let's rate Elden Ring DLC properly as it deserves. First section is the story. Again, mumbo jumbo bullshit that's even more confusing than the main campaign mumbo jumbo bullshit. I strongly believe that even developers from Software don't know the story of the Elden Ring. They assemble bunch of crap on gear and hints in the world so players can theorize about the story for years to come. Theorize means, well, 100,000 content creators with different opinions that just think how they know what's going on, but in reality, they're all clickbaiting for views. No one knows what is happening in Elden Ring, and that's a fact and probably the only truth you'll ever hear about this game. As far as the DLC story goes, well, I finished the DLC without even knowing I finished it cause credits never rolled. That's how stupid the ending was, one of the most disappointing endings I've seen in my life. If you thought how DLC will make some closure and clearance on the entire story of the Elden Ring, you were wrong. It will only make things worse and more confusing. But hey, that's what people want, I guess, and From Software delivers easy money on bunch of nonsense. Why I say it like this? Well, I'm sick and tired from absurdity in storytelling from all Souls-like games, its copycats, as well as AAAs from Software, including the Elden Ring. Elden Ring is an absolute king of absurdity. 4 out of 10 for the story. Next section would be game bugs and optimization. For some reason, this DLC works worse than the main campaign. It's still quite a smooth game, but it's far from being perfect. Frame drops happen often, game is unstable, crashing from time to time as well. Optimization is poor for this DLC. 8 out of 10 for game bugs and optimization. Next section would be game time. $40 price for 30 hours long DLC. I 100%ed this DLC, by the way. I killed all main and optional bosses and explored every corner of the Shadowlands world map. Is it worth it? Better to wait for sale in this case. This is indeed one of the biggest DLCs in the history of gaming, but alas, it's far from the best one. 8 out of 10 for the game time. Next section would be game difficulty. This is the part where players complain the most. Elden Ring DLC is way much harder than the main campaign. Harder in all terms: exploration, secrets, mobs, and especially main bosses. Main bosses, almost all of them have like 2 to 3 moves that easily one-shot in 90% of time. And those moves are mostly huge AoE nuclear strikes where nothing saves you from receiving damage. They hit so hard that the entire screen is blinking in front of your eyes for 3 to 5 seconds straight. So good luck surviving. Finally, From Software did something right in this one, in terms of the difficulty, but alas, they will nerf every single encounter in this DLC considering how many people complain. For what it's worth, I played it in its vanilla state and I finished it in its vanilla state, and I will never replay again for sure. I believe replay value is very low. Elden Ring went from the easiest Souls-like to the hardest one with just this DLC. 10 out of 10 for the game difficulty. Next section would be maps and graphics. Verticality is the main feature of this brand new map. There are layers and layers with bunch of secrets and new areas to discover. Around 40% of the world map is flat empty in return. I mean it, it's literally empty. As far as graphics go, Elden Ring engine is outdated. This game looks old and stale, and the only thing that will forever shine are unique areas and the amazing art style. but graphics, I mean it, they're like 15 years old. Map variety is quite good, even mini dungeons feel handcrafted now instead of generic crab dungeons from the main campaign. You know, those Bloodborne-like mini dungeons. We got plenty of new areas to explore, and that's the most important thing. The game feels more or less the same like the main campaign in return. 8 out of 10 for maps and graphics. Next section, and the most important one, would be gameplay. More of the same, Dark Souls 4 with a horse. Don't even know why they call this game Elden Ring in the first place when it's clear enough that this is Dark Souls 4. Classic stuff on gameplay here. Dodge, roll, wait for enemies to finish their animations, then attack and repeat. Exploration is the big part of the game, as well as bunch of secrets and hidden passages to find and unlock. Now, is it immersive? Is it fun? Yes and yes for majority of player base. For me, considering that I played and finished every single Souls-like from indies, AA's to From Software games, well, for me, it was a bit boring experience, to be honest. Cause, again, it's more of the same. I'm fed up with Souls-likes, but I still 100%ed Elden Ring DLC. In my opinion, that's a good game then. 9 out of 10 for the gameplay. Next section would be leveling and itemization. They added hundreds of new items in terms of gear and consumables, and all of that is fine, but now I have a feeling like nothing matters anymore for this DLC. There is zero sense of progression. Main mechanic of Souls, or should I say runes, is replaced by perma upgrades from the Erdtree fragments that you can find by exploration only. It's not only low progression, it's also that risk-reward factor now, like it's not there anymore. I mean, risk is there, and rewards in 99% of time are mostly whatever. The game has a big problem. DLC should have been a different game, a standalone game. It would be 10 times better to play this DLC from level 1 with fresh character and with DLC items only, instead of level 150 plus with around 2000 items on your disposal from the start. A complete mess. I had a headache every time when I opened the inventory. It's like a mountain of trash collapsing on you. Elden Ring suffocated from its own size. There are more problems, of course. You can only use one weapon move and one spell at a time. 90% of buttons you use are dodge and flat light attacks to dispose of enemies. I mean, Souls-like fans will probably be against me here, but it was fine 15 years ago in Dark Souls 1, in Demon Souls. In my point of view, it's not fine to have the exact same combat mechanics 15 years later, and no one dares to say the word about it. Look at the shitty God of War Ragnarok, for example. At least you can output 30 different combos in a single combat. In Elden Ring, you just spam one attack. I am sorry, I love Souls, but someone has to say it. Combat and graphics are stale, old and outdated, and it's a fact. 5 out of 10 for leveling and itemization. Next section would be NPCs and enemies. Around 10 mumbo-jumbo let's all talk nonsense NPCs in this DLC, and that's about it. A lot of enemies repeat from the main campaign and some of the optional bosses, so yes, there's a lot of reused assets. As far as new bosses go, they're brilliant, and probably the main highlight of this DLC are the actual boss fights. They're crazy, they're unfair, they're challenging, with amazing design while being extremely memorable and unique. Enemy variety is huge considering it's a DLC. 9 out of 10 for NPCs and enemies. Last section is music and sound. Music was straight amazing in this DLC. Sound effects were great and voice acting seems better than ever in a Souls-like. Flat 10 out of 10. Final verdict. We got 71 points in 9 sections, and that would be 7.8 out of 10 for Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree DLC. So to summarize, it's more of the same with a horse. From Software Souls-likes are going downhill. They have to innovate for the next title. By innovation, I mean more complex combat with far better graphics while applying difficulty factor from this DLC as the minimum line. they need to force players to use more buttons and more strategy while playing the game. And yes, casuals are already upset about the difficulty and they will probably nerf most of the bosses. And yes, media is praising the worst Souls-like ever, calling it the best DLC ever created. Geralt laughs out loud here. I guess media is afraid to upset Souls-like fans now, cause there are way too many. Crazy world we live in. In the meantime, our dear Souls-like is lacking soul, and From Software has to do something about it. They were on the good path with Sekiro, with a lot of innovation, and I don't know what happened for them to go downhill now. This DLC is a straight solid game, but I'm afraid for the future of the genre. I wanna see something fresh and new, not more of the same. There are more problems with this DLC, but truth to be told, I'm here to say what I think about the game, not to give feedbacks. And what I think right now is, wait for sale, you don't need to play this, it won't run away. It ain't worth the money.